Any day now. Yeah. I'm refreshing page, waiting on servers. Just okay. Here, refreshing page. Okay. I'm starting to get some signal from. Not clearly. Let me pull this up somewhere else. I'm not sure. It says that we are streaming. Yet, I cannot. Stand by, folks. If we are streaming, we're just checking to make sure that we're in sync with all the servers. And I am eagerly waiting to see something show up. There. Okay. Yes. When I go. Okay. Yes. It's a little jittery. Okay, I'm sorry you had to listen to all that. PJNet.tv. We're on the air. We think we're streaming. It looks a little jittery, but we're going to go with it. And we are recording. And we have our Doug waiting in our green room, chat room waiting, and all that. So we will switch to Studio 18 after this countdown. After this countdown. What is going on here? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, 0. Okay. Hello. Welcome to PJNet.tv. I'm your host, Coach Prasick. I am glad to be here opening a brand new week and opening a brand new month on the same day, March the 1st. It's 9 o'clock. Hey, if you're watching this out there on social media, we're glad you've joined us. We'd invite you to join the fellowship, the chat room, at pjnet.tv. It is the first Monday of the month, and I always look forward to that because Doug Carter comes to join us, and Doug is a deep thinker and expresses himself with great clarity and articulates his thoughts well. Hey, Doug, how you doing?
Great, Coach. How are you doing?
Just fine. I'm sorry I came in kind of hot tonight, but we've got 3 days of 9, three down, 6 to go of 11-hour shifts back to back. So you get to do most of the talking tonight because, well, I'm just going to go to bed and you go with it. But I remember a long time ago, the first video we made, back when we were experimenting, we opened it up. We need to think about thinking. Remember that?
I remember that. Yes. And we definitely need to think about thinking. And I've been teaching a lot about that the last couple of weeks in class. And what I've come across, Coach, is in the news and in current events, we're experiencing that as Christians. We're experiencing the effects of not really thinking very deeply. Mm-hmm. And that's really what I want to talk about. And, we're losing the cultural war. Let's just be frank about that. But what can we do about it? I think that the cultural war is not lost. And I think that we need to embrace the hope that God gives us and go back to the playbook and do what God says. And I think we can win the cultural war. But I can tell you right now, sitting back and being the cheerleader is not cutting it. We've done it for so long, and the church has declined over so many years. Something's got to change. We've got to think outside the box. And I think the key is to think correctly and to communicate correctly. Because it's not enough to know about theology. We need to apply it.
Okay, and I'm fidgeting with my tablet. Something is wrong, and I just want to, so if I appear distracted, the reason for that is, well, I am. Okay, if we're not winning the cultural war, let's look at the assets. Let's look at the resources out there and try to break down, where are things going awry? Okay, well, there are opinion leaders. Now, okay, let's first talk about the church. In my opinion, the church has traditionally been and should be the opinion leadership beacon. But along came the Johnson Act, and the church decided that church and politics don't mix, and when it comes to matters of morality, abortion, you know, all kinds of, well, moral questions, the church is no longer so much the moral authority unless it's outside of the political theater. Mistake?
Well, we gave that. Well, we gave that away, and we need to take it back. Quite frankly, that was a wrong decision, and it's led to an absolute disaster. But I think we need to start comparing worldviews, and we talk about letting our voice be heard, but it's not enough just to let our voice be heard. We need to give some reasons why our voice is different, and we need to be rational about it, but we need to be understanding and empathetic, because there's a reason why that act was passed. It's because other people had a voice, and they felt like their voice wasn't being heard. And I think that if we can give people a chance and just be good listeners, and let them say what they want to say, and understand what it is that they want, and perhaps that's where we can meet everybody's needs. Maybe not necessarily give them everything they want, or they're certainly not going to give us everything we want, but we need to negotiate and find out, is there something in common that we can find common ground on? For instance, climate change. Okay, that's a big hot button issue. And as Christians, I don't think we fully understand how to respond to this, because I'm not hearing a biblical response to it. And the people driving that narrative are the people that don't believe in God. And they're forcing the biblical worldview to the side. They're forcing any science that deviates from their worldview off the stage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not helping anybody. It's not solving any problems, even if any problems do in fact exist. We still have to prove that. But we need to listen, be good listeners.
I don't disagree with that. I just don't think that's it. I think everything you said is good and true. Here's a model that I would say is more likely. The Great Society. Remember that? Okay. We're going to make sure that nobody in this country is impoverished, nobody's poor, everybody's fed. And that began the expansion of the federal government, and people began to see the federal government as their sustainer, as their safety net. Well, the church is supposed to do that. And the churches stood by and thought, well, this is wonderful. Now we don't have to worry about, people, because in the past, churches met the needs of the community, and churches, now I'm not saying that it was perfect and every decision made in every congregation was correct with respect to taking care of the poor, but at least there was some discretion, and it was streamlined. People went to the church, and there was a group of people that knew each other and knew the person, or to some extent anyway, and they would look at the case and do and kind of meter out, or ration, what's the word I'm looking for, measure out the assistance based on their understanding of the needs. Oh, no, but the federal government is not capable of doing that, and I'm not sure that's the goal, because there could be a more sinister goal here, is if people become dependent upon you, they are easily manipulated. Okay, so yes. I think that was the slippery slope, and everything else, it just deteriorated from there.
I agree with you. And the church needs to go back to being the church. And I think this period in our history where we're starting to feel the effects of persecution is forcing us back into the true church. What does the Bible really, really say about these issues? And are we going to think correctly about it? And that's where we need to, to really focus some energy.
Let's unwrap it a little bit more. If the church was meeting community needs, in other words, a family's house burnt down, the church organized and raised the money and rebuilt the house by whatever means, okay, you're winning the hearts and minds of the general population in that community. People have a favorable opinion of church. Okay, so now if you take that role out and put it in the hands of the government, now the church is left with teaching the moral do's and don'ts So now the church is seen as, they worship a God who is in fact a cosmic killjoy of some kind that doesn't want you to have any fun, because anything that's fun is a sin. And God, so we become the bad people. We opened ourselves to criticism because that's all we do is say you can't drink, you can't smoke, you can't cuss, you can't chew, you can't spit, you can't do anything. You can't dance because if it's fun, it must be sinful. Well, this is the corner we painted ourselves into when we abdicated our responsibility to the broader community to meet those community needs when people were hurting. Well, it used to be when people had medical bills they couldn't pay, they'd go to the church, right?
That's right.
Yeah, remember?
Yep.
When grandma needed taken care of, somebody from church would come to your house. So I think that's where things went off the cliff, and we're just kind of slowing down the rate of descent at best we can.
Yeah, and I had a student that she's obviously not Christian, and she's damning the Christians for holding back progress. So somehow that there's in her real world, her reality is that Christians are a hindrance to the progression of society. And we should never be seen that way.
Well, I'll be honest with you, Doug, and I know this is shocking, but from her point of view, she's right.
Yeah.
We stand against everything she wants to do.
Right. So we need to go back and be the salt and light, but I don't want to use it tritely. I want to say that we want to reflect the divine nature of God. We were created in his image, and we were told to go out and to serve others and meet them. We need to meet them on their deepest levels. That's not the job of the state. That's the church's job.
And when you do, people tend to worship the state as the God, okay? Because that's their sustainer, okay? The government becomes your sustainer. Okay, but it gets worse, okay? So here we go. And now we have people in the leadership, in positions of leadership in our own, that we look to that are supposed to be on our side. On the campaign trail, they say all these good things that we agree with, and we vote for them. And none of those good things ever come true, because after the election's over, they live in a bubble called Washington, D.C., and in that culture, and they literally come home and have town hall meetings and begin to explain when we raise a question that the answer goes something like this. Well, let me explain how it works in Washington. And I want to yank their head off and spit down their neck. I didn't send you to Washington to come down here to tell me how it is in Washington.
That's right.
We sent you there to effect change, and now you're coming back lecturing me on how that's not possible. Those are excuses. I don't buy them.
All right, so now we're doing exactly what we're talking about we need to change. So we're damning the darkness. Now, what are we going to do to change that and be a light in the darkness? And first of all, we need to start thinking about what does the Bible really say? And we need to figure out where we are in this big overarching story, because I think a lot of people don't understand, first of all, the gravity of the situation that we're facing. And that is this. Throughout the history of the world, up until now, there is a God that created. There is an enemy that is throwing us off the track. They're throwing us away from God. Humanity is fallen. There is a climate that's responding. God will use the climate to as judgment. When man deviates from his statutes and ordinances, God will separate. He will change the seasons. And it's a reflection of our sinful nature, our rebellion against his order. Well, the other side believes that mankind is causing climate change. Well, the Bible says it's going to happen, and it's going to be blamed on man. But I don't think we know enough to realize, hey, part of our mistakes, part of our thinking is causing this or allowing this to happen. And we need to figure out what the Bible says, get back in line with the Bible, and get back in line with God's order. And it's going to take a reform. And you think about the days of Josiah, and we need to go back and read the Bible and go back and do what it says.
Fascinated by a comment in the chat room from Sherry Lynn. See if you recognize this. Be a light in the darkness. Wait a minute. Don't damn the darkness, be a light. Great point, Doug.
Yeah, I think I've heard that before.
Sherry Lynn, Doug was kind enough to invite me to a Faith and Freedom, I believe, conference in Atlanta. There were so many good speakers, but that's the only thing I remember. I don't even know who said it, but I think he said it's easy to damn the darkness, and that's what we do. So the next step in my hierarchy of failure is that social media comes online, and we use that as a battering ram. Well, I think both sides are using it as a battering ram, but we're doing it. So forget what they're doing. Let's focus on what we're doing, and we damn the darkness. We bitch and complain and wail and screech and holler, and we're indignant. We're righteously indignant. Okay, good.
We're just like Pharisees,
right? But this isn't winning anybody over. We're just pumping more poison into the atmosphere. And very few people. I think it really gets down to something simple. They will know we are Christians by our love. Okay, let's start serving communities. I mean, not long ago, I said we need to make some changes here at PJNet. Go find somebody who is actually doing ministry. Okay. Okay. Now, so the fourth and last step in this progression or digression, I should call it. Social media has made it possible for talking heads to get enormous platforms. And by the way, they're speaking the truth. And one of them just died. I mean, it made a lot of changes, but I'm generalizing, saying talking heads. Well, that's kind of what we are right here now. Okay, we got heads talking, lecturing people on what's wrong and all that, but we're not seeing leadership saying, here's what we'll do about it. Let me help explain that, and I'll turn it over to you, Mike. Mike Huckabee, there's a lot you could criticize about Mike Huckabee, but he's a good man. And I remember when the LGBTQ, were going to do something for Chick-fil-A. Demonstrate, do something to okay. Well, Mike Huckabee announced, well, let's have Chick-fil-A Appreciation Day. And man, that it was unbelievable. And look at the My Pillow guy. He caught some flack, and people why don't we start rallying around those people that are showing, not just saying, but showing, hey, Chick-fil-A hires people well above minimum wage. Or at 15, they pay more. And they don't try to exploit their employees to work as cheap as possible. So we started with the Great Society, okay, in terms of wealth distribution, the Robin Hood effect, also in how do community needs get met. Then we went on to the leadership itself is either corrupt or inept, or both, to talking heads. So that is what I would describe as the problem. So how do each of us, how do we reverse this? Or how do we mitigate it for now?
How do we mitigate it? Well, we have to go out and reflect the nature of Christ. And I think that's where we're falling down. We're throwing verbal sticks and stones at people and not looking inward. Whenever a crisis comes and there's nowhere to turn to except God, then you're going to turn inward. And I think the worse it gets, the more we're going to turn inward. And it's a blessing. It's a double-edged sword, I guess is a better way to say that. It's a double-edged sword that we're forced to look at ourselves and circumcise what's wrong in our heart. And that's a painful experience, but the truth needs to happen. God is truth, and we need to reflect God's nature to the world. And that's not going to happen until we deal with the junk in our own lives.
I think the word was excise that you want to use, but nonetheless, and gosh, we're out of time. Let me give you another example, and I don't want to portray myself as some kind of hero. I'm not. Remember when anthrax was a deal? Remember that? The anthrax?
Yep.
Okay. Well, there was an incident. My daughter was about in the 6th or 7th grade, and they closed the school because a student had sprayed a bottle of something in the chemistry lab, blah, 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 and they didn't. So they panicked, basically. It was an organized panic, but they barricaded the school, and several parents were collected up around the the perimeter of the school. And of course everybody's asking questions. What's happened? Who's in charge? Whose jurisdiction is this? Is it the Florida State University Police? Is it Leon County? Is it the city? Who's in charge? And everybody's, angry, blame gaming, You know what I did, Doug?
What's that?
I said, if anybody would like to come over here and let's just pray, you can join me. I don't care who's in charge. Whoever, put it this way, it doesn't matter what my opinion is. Whoever's in charge is in charge. And I know this. God's in charge. That's who's in charge. Now, right. I didn't have an overwhelming, but you know what? No one threw me out of the, I think that we fear so much. I think if we would simply take some risks and just live, as you said earlier, live the life that we're called to and quit being afraid. Yeah, I think we could make an impact. We're not bad people. We're good people. We want good. We basically want to be left alone.
That's right. And I think the other people want to be left alone as well. And I think that
no, they don't, Doug.
Well, the average person, I'm not talking about leadership. I'm talking about the average person. If you were to ask them, what drives them, and they feel like that Christianity is imposing our rules and our laws and our morality upon them, and they want the complete and absolute freedom from any and all moral constraints. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely. But what gave them power, what got them in the position to do that, was they leveraged envy, covetousness. Somebody else has got a bunch of money and you don't, so obviously they exploited you. They got rich at somebody else. It's the pie's only this big. If they've got a bigger slice of it, it must have come from you. And it triggered envy. How many commercials? I know we're over time, folks, but we're on to something here, okay? How many commercials? I listen to the radio. I'm driving around, and you'll hear commercials. Come down here and get the car that you deserve. Huh?
Yeah. So marketing is about appealing to emotion. And appealing to envy
that you deserve. Okay, that's covetousness, and then you'll get these people. You may be entitled to compensation. You're a victim. This is all they're feeding the same monster. It's covetousness and envy and greed.
Instead of allowing the boundary lines that God set before me to fall in pleasant places, and being content with the blessings that God gives us. Every good and perfect gift comes from above, from the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change. And it's a complete denial of him, but we need to introduce people to that God who's willing to bless them and not steal from everybody else to do it.
All right, we're going to go one more minute. All right, so we have our rallies, okay? And we get people up on the stage that say what?
I mean, they're saying be vocal, be engaged. But then what?
Put more.
What are you going to
points on the
say
board.
when you're vocal? Yeah, when you're vocal, what are you going to say?
Well, you see it on social media. It's not working. But this would be like a football coach saying we need to put more points on the board.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. That's not a plan on how to do it. So, those in leadership positions need to say, I have a plan. Here's the plan. Who's on board? And let's get other people on board. And the plan needs to make sense. But I think whatever plan we come up with needs to meet immediate needs in the community. We need to start being servants again, and quit being warriors and start being servants. How's that?
That's right, because neither God, nor Satan, nor man, nor the environment is changing. The story stays the same. And if we don't change, we are in for a rough ride. It's the same story. And it's time to stand up and be the church and do, not just stand up and speak out,
Right.
but
Do.
be
Yeah.
and do.
Be and do. Well,
Yes.
darn it. We will continue. Doug, I appreciate your passion, and thanks for, being that voice of reason in the screaming and screeching out there on social media. We appreciate it, and we'll have to just continue this next month because we've got Casper coming up here in, well, just a few minutes.
All right. Thanks a lot, Coach.
All right, you're the man, Doug. Thank you, sir. Way, if you look carefully, you can see my new monitor here. It's much larger than this monitor or that monitor. So happy about that. That's the Eagle's Nest, folks, the pjnet.tv broadcast facilities. Boy, well, it keeps going on and on and on. Casper, I wish we would have had more time. Doug was on a roll. Darn it. But Casper, he'll be on a roll too. Don't worry. He'll be here at the bottom of the hour. Until then, I ask you to ask yourself this first. 2 questions, just 2. Real simple. But this will blow the smoke away, okay? First question is this. What is the boldest thing that you've done for Jesus Christ? And the second one is, how long ago was that? Let's not ever be satisfied with either answer.